In this video, we're going to look at using scenes to reinforce a film's theme. The film we're looking at today is A Serious Man by the Coen brothers. I don't think it'll negatively affect your experience of the film, but I'll be talking about various scenes in the film, so if you'd rather watch it without knowing anything, then now's your chance to steer clear.
Get the fuck out of here.
If you're familiar with the film, you'll know that it centers a lot around the meaning of life, faith, and the degree of control we have over our lives. The main character, Larry Gopnik, masterfully played by Michael Stuhlbarg, is blinded by the search for the meaning of life, while his own life slowly crumbles around him.
Look, something is very wrong. I don't want Santana Abraxas. I've just been in a terrible auto accident.
An important aspect of this search is that he seems to relinquish his ability to try to answer these questions himself or to take control of his life. This fits very well with the psychological theory of an external locus of control, which is the belief that you can't influence the outcomes and events in your life, or that they are externally determined through, for example, chance, fate, or destiny. I consider what I just mentioned the core themes of the film, which are reinforced throughout its runtime in a number of ways. One of the ways it's reinforced is through repetition. One of the more obvious examples is through the callback-like repetition of certain phrases like,
"What's going on?"
And
I didn't do anything.
The Coen brothers are masters of using repetition in dialogue for comedic effect, but in this case it also serves as a telltale sign of Larry's psychology. He never feels informed about or in control of his life, and he believes that not acting will prevent him from taking the wrong action and should produce desirable results. However, it is of course this inaction and his external locus of control that prevent him from taking charge of his life to produce a desirable outcome. Now, traditionally, you would identify this limiting factor in your character and then have them overcome it and change for the better. But the Coen brothers didn't do this.
Fuck no, baby!
I think this unconventional approach is one of the reasons why the film is lesser known than some of their other work, even though it personally became one of my favorite Coen brothers films once I overcame the frustration of expecting answers to the questions raised by the film. You see, that frustration is, in my opinion, a product of how well the scenes in this film are structured. But how do the Coen brothers stir this feeling in the viewer? Well, I think it's through another form of repetition. There's a repeated structure in some of the scenes. Namely, when Larry looks for guidance or advice, there's usually a build-up of anticipation that leads to some anticlimactic lack of an answer. This happens each time Larry sees one of the rabbis to directly ask for advice, but even when he seeks legal counsel for a seemingly unrelated matter. There's a repeated search for an answer that never comes. The most prominent example is the story that Rabbi Nachtner tells about the dentist that seems to find a message engraved in the teeth of one of his patients. This unexplainable, mysterious message consumes the dentist. He tries to look for explanations, other messages, advice. The scene is built in a similar way to how a scene from a noir film might approach an investigation. The dentist goes through all the possibilities and places he could find a message. He tries everything he can to solve this problem and answer this question. We're really pulled into this story through basic intrigue and then a nice build-up of ruling out ways in which we might approach explaining it or looking for an answer. Importantly, the story is also told with momentum through the dialogue, the performances, and music in a way that we expect a big reveal as to the meaning of this message.
What can such a sign mean?
But then we get to the end and the rabbi stops right before where we would expect the answer to come. Only when asked does he finally explain that the dentist went back to his normal life and slowly just stopped thinking about it.
These questions that are bothering you, Larry, maybe they're like a toothache. Feel them for a while, then they go away.
Incredibly dissatisfying, right?
Is it relevant?
Again, I'm convinced this dissatisfying, unconventional approach contributed to the lack of awareness about this film compared to their other films, but it's actually a result of really impressive craftsmanship. What I find particularly interesting about this scene is that really there's a fairly decent message wrapped up in the story. Worrying about questions that don't affect your life and perhaps can't be answered won't do you any good, and actually the best approach could be to focus on the parts of your life you will benefit from giving attention to, like your relationships, your hobbies, and your work. But that potential message at the end is packaged in such a throwaway manner that it's given no weight or meaning at all. You'll notice that a lot of the advice and messages Larry hears actually have some good core ideas behind them, but they're told in such an unclear or impractical way that they're of no use to him, because he doesn't read into it. He just wants someone to tell him what to do. Again, external locus of control.
Let me tell you why I'm bringing this up.
I think that's really a key aspect of this character. In these scenes, the Coen brothers know exactly how to tell the story to hook you and keep you invested, and then how to completely disappoint you, which puts you exactly in Larry's shoes. Even if you can't relate to the behavior and the situation of the character, you can relate to how he feels in that moment because you've been put through the exact same experience listening to this advice, which is a really effective way of getting you to empathize with the character. Like I said, this scene structure is repeated throughout the film in different ways, which keeps putting you in the same state as Larry, a state of dissatisfied disappointment and irritation. These repetitions also give you this feeling of being trapped in this cycle, or at least like everything is dragging and inconsequential and you just can't get that relief. And in these scenes, sometimes the potential answer is pulled from us in different ways. In the case of a small, clear answer, it's pulled from us in the last second, like when Saul keels over when we're about to hear the solution to the property line dispute. Or in another way, when the anticipation of the answer is drawn out as long as possible, like when Larry tries to finally speak with the most seasoned Rabbi Marshak.
The rabbi is busy.
But it's that anticipation that makes the payoff so much funnier as well.
He didn't look busy.
The summation of the effect of these scenes, coupled with the more contemplative sequences and the surreal interweaving of dreams and reality, are what create the feeling of this film. For me, a kind of melancholy, frustrating portrayal of life through the lens of dry humour.
What do you propose? Passing grade.
Because if you were to exclusively look at this film through the eyes of Larry, it's an unbearably frustrating tragedy. But if you take a step outside of him, for any of the scenes, it's really funny.
Larry, you are jesting.
So your experience of the film really depends on your tendency to slip into Larry's shoes. So, in this way, repeating the disappointing structure of some of these scenes reinforces the themes of the film, the never-ending search for an answer that won't come. Repetition in this way is a really powerful tool that you can use when writing, shooting, or editing. If you want something to stick, repeat it. It's that simple.
You're going to have to repeat that.
It's creating an effective scene that's the difficult part. But that's all for this analysis. Thanks for listening, and see you soon.